This episode of Rick and Rick Rule the World is brought to you by Taskin, the first name in ultra-stylish, premium quality travel gear, like the exquisitely designed Taskin One expandable backpack. With 9 practical variations, the Taskin One is always the right size for wherever life takes you next. Save 30% on your next purchase when you use the promo code R&R Take 30. That's R&R Take 30 at TaskinSF.com.
Next up on an all-new Rick and Rick.
Fire up the bat signal and let the vengeance begin.
That's right. It's time for the official Rick and Rick review of The Batman.
With all the riddle me thises and riddle me that's.
All the comic book callbacks, bat gadgets, cat calls, and car crashes.
Plus all the penguin droppings you can quack, quack, quack at.
And it all starts right here, right now.
On the one show where everybody loves superhero Rick flicks.
And everybody rules the world.
Hey, welcome one and all to a spanking new episode of Rick and Rick Rule the World. I'm Rick Matheson, and I am joined, as always, by my good friend, Alfred Pennyworth. I mean Rick Wooden. How you doing, Rick?
Doing great. I'm excited about this episode. I'm excited to talk about the Batman.
Gosh, it was so weird going to the movies again. It was almost 2 years, almost to the day, since I stepped into the theater. So pretty interesting. We do have a Bat-tastic episode for everybody, because this is the official and heavily spoilerific Rick and Rick review of Matt Reeves' not just Batman, but The Batman, a nearly 3-hour epic starring Robert Pattinson as the Caped Crusader in a story of a violent masked orphan who takes on Gotham City's underworld and finds himself pitted against a violent masked orphan out to do the same. Okay, we're going to get into more of that in just a moment. Before we dive in, Rick, what was your overall feel for this movie?
You know, I don't have as much context with the DC universe, so I don't know all the stories. However, a number of the stories they touched on were stories my friends who were big into Batman were talking about. So I kind of went in with a little bit more knowledge than I typically would with a DC movie. And I have to say it paid off well. There are certain things that I think were just spectacular. And there were a couple things that I just think were pathetic. But, you know, when you mix that all together, I have to say, I think I was impressed.
Yeah, I was too. Part of this, I feel like, is recency. And I'm trying to figure out, okay, is this my new favorite Batman or not? And then I think of, okay, well, I really liked Christian Bale as Batman. Longtime listener Paul sent me a graphic a couple weeks ago that, I mean, it cracked me up. It has a lineup of the different actors who've played Batman since the 1940s, I guess, and it shows their heights. And it would be hilarious to see all the actors in a police lineup in their Batman outfits, because they're all over the place. Oh, really? Ben Affleck is 6'3". Adam West was 6'1". Robert Pattinson is about 6 feet, same with Christian Bale, and same with Val Kilmer. But George Clooney is 5'8", and Michael Keaton is barely 5'8". So you mix them up, and maybe the Lego Batman, voiced by Will Arnett, maybe an inch tall. You got quite a lineup there if they were all put together at the same time in their bat outfits. I thought it was pretty funny. As of this recording anyway, Rick, the Batman has now made more than $500 million at the box office, despite the pandemic. By comparison, and I don't know if this is adjusted for inflation, but The Dark Knight made about $533 million. Dark Knight Rises about $448 million. Batman versus Superman about $330 million. And then Tim Burton's Batman was $250 million, according to Forbes. And so it's doing quite well, especially considering that we're still in a pandemic.
I was talking to a couple listeners, Aaron and Hung, and they're millennials, and they were saying, oh, I can't wait to go see it. And I asked them if they're Batman fans, and they were like, no, not really, but I really like the actor, so I'm going to go see it for the actor. It made me kind of reflect on that and think about how, you know, one of the reasons the James Bond movies, I think, keep having so much legs is because they introduce new Bonds that are kind of relevant to the current generation. And so they've kind of extended that franchise over and over and over again because of it. And in a way, just like you were talking about with all the different Batmans, they've kind of done that here as well. Yeah, this may not have been the Batman that you would have chose or that I would have chose, but he's relevant to the moviegoers today in a way that maybe some of the other ones wouldn't be. I thought that was kind of insightful, that they were seeing it not only just because he was a Batman, but because of the actor who was in it.
Apparently, Robert Pattinson and the guy who plays Daredevil and Andrew Garfield, who plays Spider-Man, apparently they were all like good friends growing up. I think even maybe as far back as high school.
Wow,
and
that's cool.
Yeah, and he took off with Twilight, and he was in an interview or something, and he said that, you know, his friends kind of blew him off after that because it was like weird to have him around because he's a big star. And then they asked them about it, a different interview, and they're like, oh, hell no, we invited him everywhere because it was like instant chick magnet, essentially. Of course we're going to invite him. Okay, so the plot here, it is A, very much a love story, and B, kind of a meditation on wealth and privilege with sort of the opposite numbers here. Bruce Wayne and I think it was Edward Nashton in this. The Riddler has had different names in other media, who were both orphaned as children, one with all the trappings of vast wealth and the other in an orphanage. One grows up vowing to fight Gotham's seedy underworld and the other going after that underworld's real patrons, Gotham's political and financial elite. Along the way, rich kid Bruce Wayne meets orphaned cat lady, Selina Kyle, and they fall in love, or at least they would if she came first and not Jim Gordon's infernal bat signal. There's at least half a dozen story arcs from the comics combined here in this movie. I felt like it was a really, really long movie.
I do have to say that I think it could have been broken into 2 movies and I would have been just fine with that. It was a little bit long, and even with that, it felt like there was a couple times where things ended abruptly. There was probably a little more scene to it that could have been done. But yeah, it was long.
In fact, someone joked part of this is based on the storyline, The Long Halloween, and this movie opens a Halloween, goes 3 hours long. It's a very long Halloween in Gotham City.
That's awesome.
In terms of performances, we talked about Robert Pattinson. I felt like he was even better in Tenet than he is here, but I was impressed that they're very different characters. Sometimes you see actors play themselves in all their movies. Yeah. It's their persona, and he is not. Yeah, and he did not do that. And I think he inhabits these characters in a really interesting way.
I kind of agree and disagree with you there. I think Robert Pattinson played a really, really good Batman, and it was unique. It was different. It was his own. He owned it, and I really liked it. I actually didn't like his Bruce Wayne character. I felt like it was like every character he played in as a vampire before. Like, it was very broody. It was very dark. To me, it didn't quite fit. I mean, it felt like, there were 2 completely different people, not an extension of the same. So while I really, really did like how he played Batman, I didn't quite have the same reaction when he was playing Bruce Wayne. Did you pick up on any of that?
I did, but partially because I had read before that some people took issues with his Bruce Wayne, only because oftentimes we see the more flamboyant persona that he puts on as Bruce Wayne, and here we don't see any of that affectation. He is just emo, as Bruce Wayne,
exactly.
The whole time.
Emo's perfect, yeah. In any incarnation of Bruce Wayne that I'd seen, this wasn't it. Yeah, there was times where he was depressed and upset and maybe even, quasi-suicidal, but this was different, and it just seemed brooding and emo and just didn't quite fit for me. I thought it was a little bit odd. Like, every time he was playing Batman, I was like, yeah, this is great. And then he'd play Bruce Wayne. I'm like, oh, there you go. There's Twilight. You said that other people said this as well, but I think I'm going to have to agree with them. I don't think he was quite as strong as a Bruce Wayne.
I do hear you there. The story arc that the character goes through when the Riddler gang member calls himself Vengeance, and he starts to realize, I don't want to be Vengeance. I need to take all the ways that I've been broken. I need to channel that into something positive and become a hero. I think that they've set the stage for him to start to bifurcate his Batman persona and to pretend Bruce Wayne in future movies, if that's the plan. I just didn't pick up on that. He just seemed depressed the whole time until the very end of the movie.
Yeah, and in fact, you just triggered it for me, because that's actually, I think, what my issue was. I'm having a hard time making the jump between somebody who was emo and depressed, like Bruce Wayne, being a Batman. Yeah. Whereas before, there was the anger, or there was the passion, or there was the vengefulness, there was the whatever that helped you kind of, had a common thread that connected the 2 characters. I felt that they were completely independent here, and I couldn't find that thread between the 2 of them.
Like I said, I think if they were planning to set the stage for him to play Bruce Wayne in the future, that different character he plays, they didn't do a great job of it. The Riddler, I think, at one point, when he's in Arkham Asylum, says something like, the mask is not a mask, it is the real person, for himself and for Batman. And that is true of the character. The Batman is who this person is. Bruce Wayne doesn't exist. He's a character that the person plays. And they had his voiceover in the movie, so they could have touched on it in voiceover, just saying, maybe I need to play a character in Bruce. It just didn't deliver on it. The other thing that didn't quite work for me is they had the kind of interior story arc of him and his relationship with Alfred. Andy Serkis is Alfred in this. Matt Reeves directed the Planet of the Apes movies, and in that, Andy Serkis is Caesar.
Exactly.
Here, he kind of puts down Alfred all along, like, you're not really a Wayne, what do you know, blah, blah, blah. But then at the end acknowledges that there was some kind of hurt and fear in him, and he really does see Alfred as a family member, a father figure even. That wasn't set up at all. I didn't really buy that scene in the hospital where he kind of was going knowing, the realization that I need to embrace the people that I care about.
Right.
I just didn't buy the storyline for them much at all. And I felt like Andy Serkis was underutilized in the role too. Alfred's actually a badass character. And in here, he seems to be that version of the character where he was, ex-MI6 and trained Bruce, to be a fighter, and would have loved to see more of that.
Me too. And this is what I actually meant when I said that I felt like it could have been split into two movies and there could have been a little bit more. Like it felt like I would have loved to see a few more flashbacks about, Alfred raising Bruce and, the training, and, that it would have been interesting to see how, he helped shape who Bruce Wayne and Batman is.
Yeah. There's an animated series, and I want to say it's on HBOMax, called Beware the Batman. I don't know when this came out, but they play much more into that relationship in a far stronger way than this movie does. The series is fantastic, and it's a much younger and beefier Alfred in it. Definitely worth checking out. It's a very entertaining series.
I have seen this, and you're right. Now that you say that, I remember, my kids were still young enough at the time when this came out. I think it was 2013 that we watched it together, and it was very good.
Yeah. Okay, so Zoe Kravitz, I thought she was great as Catwoman, and I liked the interplay and the chemistry between the two characters. I think they got a lot of what's in the comics right. I don't know if she had a stunt double, but I loved her fight scenes. I thought she had great attitude. She was another orphan and grew up sort of hardscrabble, and she makes comments about, and it's true to the character, about Gotham's elite and, that they're just as corrupt as actual hardcore criminals and that kind of thing. So I really liked a lot of that. I did read somebody saying that there's a lot of them breathing in each other's mouths. I didn't really notice that much. It didn't seem fake to
funny.
me. Yeah,
I didn't catch that at all.
And I think that to the extent it was there, I think it worked, and you felt some chemistry between them. For whatever reason, he reminds me the most of Adam West's Batman in The Mask. The Mask itself.
I had to look that up because I had the same reaction after I saw it. Did you figure out why?
Was there some official story behind it?
Not as much as there was an official story, but one of the elements on the mask, I saw it, but I didn't see it kind of thing. The nose is actually kind of a square cutout, just like they had in the original series.
What I liked about this uniform too is the Tim Burton Batman. Michael Keaton's uniform, you could tell the head was too large for the outfit, but two, you could tell he couldn't move his head. He couldn't look side to side or look up. And so there was nothing functional about that. And this felt like almost believable that he could fight. I mean, sure, the cape, that's just, asking to get killed, but I believed him fighting. And I didn't realize, man, the thing was like deflecting machine gun fire and stuff. So it was heavy duty armor, but it was flexible and you believed that he was actually fighting.
Yeah. And, to your point, that was one of the things I really liked is you could see that it wasn't just, ricocheting off and he's staying there super strong. Like there were times where he took a hard hit, by a bullet or whatever, and he got knocked back. I think he even got knocked down at one point. It gave you that realism of, there's armor there, but then there's also damage that's happening. In my mind, I'm picturing that underneath, he's probably pretty bruised up from all that.
Shoot, the whole thing where he flew in the bat wings off the building and then hit the overhang, the fact that he got up again is miraculous. I read somewhere that he would have been traveling at least 112 miles per hour, and it would not have ended well.
The other one I really enjoyed was Colin Farrell, who played the Penguin. I thought his take on this was different and unique, and I really liked the way he did this. In a way, he kind of had a throwback to Jack Nicholson's little bit of craziness, but then at the same time, he almost had kind of like the Godfather-esque kind of approach to it as well. And he kind of fused all these things together in a way that was just like really kind of cool and kind of compelling. And I mean, honestly, he was creepy as all get out. I was a little terrified of him.
Yeah, I like that character. You could tell he was a total ass. I love the car chase scene and him thinking he's got the better of Bruce. Right. And I thought he played it really well, especially given the prosthetics that he was wearing. Right. Oscar to whoever did the prosthetics, because you could actually read facial expressions. I did find myself wondering, okay, why even bother with Colin Farrell if you're going to make him look completely different? There are character actors that could have played the character just physically, just as well. But for what I saw on film, I thought he was fantastic. What I did like, and maybe this is what you're getting at, is you saw the machinations in his mind. It wasn't what he said all the time. It was him taking things in, and he would deflect in his dialogue, but you could see him thinking through. He was the one who put all the pieces together and outed Falcone under the light that ended in Falcone's murder. So I thought that was excellent. Wells was great, but is always great. Jeffrey Wright as Jim Gordon.
You know, I tripped on this one because I saw the movie and I kept thinking, gosh, this actor is so familiar and he's good. What has he played in? And as I was walking out of the movie theater, it dawned on me, Westworld. And it's like, oh my God, that was him. Like, he did an amazing job. I really liked him in this particular role.
I hope we see a lot more of him in whatever sequels come out of this. He was pre-Commissioner Jim Gordon, but one of the few good cops on the Gotham force. He didn't know what he didn't know, just like Riddler said of Batman. He didn't know who was good, who was bad, and what he was really up against, and was ballsy to help Batman in the ways that he did. So I just thought Jeffrey Wright was great in this. He's never bad. I've yet to see him suck in anything.
How'd you feel about Paul Dano as the Riddler? I was kind of mixed on him.
Yeah, I was too. I felt like I had taken in or absorbed too much of the hype around the movie, and him in particular going into the movie, that I felt like, he's fine. But I appear to be in the minority. I think most people seem to universally praise his rendition of Riddler.
You know, I really liked it when it is going to almost be a repeat of what I said about Robert as Batman versus Bruce Wayne. But when he was actually playing the Riddler, I really kind of enjoyed it. I felt like he did a really good job. But when he was trying to play, you know, his normal self, I kept having flashbacks to one of the interns on that comedy, The Office. And I had a really hard time taking him serious because he kind of looks like that guy that was an intern. And so to me, it was distracting, and I couldn't quite suspend disbelief and enjoy him in that character. As soon as you saw his face, and it's like he was being a little crazy, but he looked goofy, and I kept expecting him to make a joke, and I don't know, it was just weird.
In general, the clues that he left, why leave the clues to do this? I'm not sure I believed all the mystique put around it. Just a tidbit is one of the Joker gang members toward the beginning of the movie is actually played by a kid who plays Tim Drake on HBO's Titans. He plays Robin, or eventual Robin. I don't know if he's Tim Drake in that scene, but Cameron did dwell on him quite a bit and his reactions to Batman, and I thought that was kind of a bit of fun casting there.
I recognized him as soon as they started playing through that scene. I was like, that is awesome that they brought, one of the characters from the live action TV series into this movie, which I think is cool.
Yeah. Okay, production. Mentioned Matt Reeves, great director. What is interesting was the Long Halloween and several of the graphic novels and comic story arcs that the movie draws from, written by Jeff Loeb, who was Matt Reeves' screenwriting teacher at USC. So you can see where some of the influence was coming. The cinematographer is, I may get this wrong, I want to say it's Greg, but it's spelled a little bit differently. It's Grieg. Fraser is the cinematographer. Clearly the cinematography owes a lot to Todd Phillips' Joker. I think the sort of overall feel is reminiscent of that movie, but he is the cinematographer of Dune, and I believe he is up for an Oscar for Dune.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Production design is James Chinland, and the job he did on this movie, it deserves an Oscar. You think about Christopher Nolan, he just went to a city and that city became Gotham. He filmed in Chicago, Chicago's Gotham. This was not an existing city, and it was as much a character, as it should be, as any of the actors were. There was such an interesting feel. It's like a city frozen in the first half of the 20th century. There is Gilded Age buildings run down as they might have been toward the late 1940s. It's decrepit, decaying, but they still have the modern technologies and modern cars. And Tim Burton did a bit of that as well, but I felt like this was a much better job here. It was much more believable.
I would agree with you there. I definitely was very impressed with it.
The score is from Michael Giacchino. So I've told you I've been watching Fringe. I didn't see it back in the day. He did the music for that series. It's one of those neat things where you see sort of an early work. I think that was 2008 on. And that was with Bad Robot. So that team, he kind of went along with them, and he did the music for the Star Trek reboot series. So all of that music from the Kelvin timeline is from Michael Giacchino. He did the music for The Incredibles. I believe he was nominated for an Academy Award, but this is amazing. So think about this. 3 months apart, he did the music for Spider-Man No Way Home and the Batman. Wow. Yeah, and the music in the Batman, it really drove a lot of the energy of this movie.
Yeah, no, I thought the music was extremely additive to the overall story. It went really well. So I hadn't realized that was him. That's really cool.
If you listen to it, I haven't read this or heard anyone say it, but it at points feels like almost like a subversive version of the old Adam West TV series music. Nothing like it, but there's a certain and there's a couple strains in it where it almost feels like a perverted version of that music to me. It felt like they were at least hearkening to it. The Batmobile, that was cool. vehicle, apparently it's a late 60s, early 70s Dodge Charger, just like in the old 60s, 70s Batman comics. I thought this was cool.
There was an interesting callback. I saw this online after seeing the movie, where the rear taillights kind of came up in a fin, paying homage to the first Batmobile.
Well, and that little jet thing totally felt like that too.
Exactly.
Love that. And the sound that it made just was awesome.
They did a great job with that. And that's actually, I have to say it, like one of my favorite things about the movies to see what they do with the Batmobiles. They're all different. They're all kind of cool in their own way.
I read somewhere that the production designer, James Chinlund, the approach he took was, I wanted it to feel like this was a car that Bruce built from the ground up.
Yeah.
And it does feel like that. Yeah, not like the Tumbler from the other movies. One Easter egg I saw, you mentioned the Batmobile sort of evoking the Adam West series. Did you notice that when they had Alfred working at his desk, there was I don't know if it's a Beethoven or whatever, but a bust on his desk that looked just like the one that Adam West and Burt Ward used to kind of pull the head off of and flick the button before they went down the bat poles to the Batcave.
No, I missed that.
Yes, there's a bust there that looks just like it. There's no way it was there by accident. It had to have been a purposeful Easter egg. What I liked in the movie is they somewhat efficiently accomplished Batman's sort of transition to realizing I can't be terrified. You see him scare the kid. All the people, when he saves their lives, they're terrified of him at first, and then he realizes I can't be terrifying. There's a graphic novel, I want to say early 2000s, Darwin Cook, called New Frontier, and it's actually the story of the creation of the Justice League, but it's set in the actual era when the Justice League was formed. So it was like post-World War II, but then leading into the space age. And we see Batman early on, and he's very much the Dark Knight, and he saves a kid from these cultists. He saves the boy, but then the boy's terrified of him. And then later on in the story, and it's years later, Superman comes to the Batcave, and all of a sudden out pops Robin. And we see that Bruce is in a different costume. And Clark says something like, a sidekick and a new costume. You turn over a new leaf? And he said, somewhere along the way, I realized I need to scare criminals, but not kids. And you kind of saw that arc in this movie, where he's realizing I've got to be a force of hope. I was impressed by that because you could see where this movie might not go there.
Yeah. One of the articles I read, they talked about how Batman is one of the few superheroes that pretty much ignores whether or not something is canon or ignores whether or not it follows the same timeline.
Right.
It just kind of does its own thing. That's one of the things that makes this kind of fun is it feels like it has that creative freedom to take things to different places. Do you remember the diner scene with the Riddler?
Yes. So glad you said that.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because according to what I read online, of course, this is just people having theories. It has a stark resemblance to that famous diner painting that is at the Art Institute in Chicago. What's it called? The
Boulevard of Broken Dreams.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. No, that was the first thing I thought. Wow, that's like right out of that painting.
I knew that they were trying to be inspired by somebody with the Riddler character, and I wasn't sure who it was. And so I did a little bit of research after watching the movie, and believe it or not, it was the Zodiac Killer. And so their inspiration for this interpretation of it was the Zodiac Killer. Wasn't that interesting?
Dude, that's super creepy, yeah. A lot of people said, God, this should have been an R-rated movie, and it somehow held its punches or whatnot, but I don't feel like it needed to be a rated R movie, and I didn't feel like it was that super violent fights, but it wasn't like innocent victims being dismembered or anything.
Yeah, I think that's the real point. It was dark without necessarily gratuitous violence or anything like that.
Yeah, I think they balanced it well.
So, one other thing I noticed, I thought this was weird, and so I had to look it up, and I did find that other people heard the same thing. There were a couple of scenes when Batman walked in that I swear I heard spurs. Like he's wearing spurs. Apparently, he was not wearing spurs, but he does have metal on his boots. He's wearing steel boots. When he was walking into some of the scenes, you could hear that clunk, 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 almost like spurs. And I thought that was kind of cool. And it made me wonder if they weren't trying to evoke that idea of a gunslinger, right? When you watch it again, listen for it. In some of the scenes when he walks in, you can hear the clank of metal like he's wearing spurs.
Well, that would be fitting because the original character, so back 1939, he was modeled after Zorro, which was a Western character. So he was sort of a modern era Zorro in those comics. So it makes sense. Oh, one other callback too is when he really needs it, he pulls that green stuff out of his utility belt. And so I'm guessing that is the Venom stuff that Bane uses, but I don't know that for certain. But it was green. Bane stuff was green, right?
Yeah. At a minimum, it's got to be a throwback.
And it is a little crazy to think that he would have already encountered encountered Bane at this point, in year 2 of being Batman. My understanding from the comics is that Bruce had become addicted to it. I guess Alfred locked him in the Batcave for a month to detox off of it. All right, so final grades for the Batman.
I'm going to go with B. I'm going to give it a solid B. I really liked it. I thought it was a really cool take on it. I definitely think it kind of reset the franchise for the new generation, but I did feel it was a little too long. I did feel that some parts didn't work for me, like I said, how some of the characters were played, and I think that, they could have done a little bit more. So I'm going to give it a solid B. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, that's about where I landed. In fact, my dialogue to myself earlier was, damn it, did I give Matrix Resurrection a B plus or a B? Yeah, I couldn't remember. This one I have to land at a B and not a B plus. I kind of came to the same place. I'm one of the few people that out of the last trilogy, I liked Batman Begins the best. The other two actually kind of bored me. Most people love the one with Heath Ledger as Joker, but I love that one. And I kind of feel the same way I did with that one afterwards of thinking, great movie, but we could have stood a couple more years before another Batman movie reboot, and I felt like this was good, but not something where I'm like, oh my God, I've got to watch this 10 times. So I'm going to give it a B.
Real question. Some people are saying that this is the best live action Batman ever.
Yeah,
are you in that camp?
I'm not going to say I think it's the best yet. I think that let's see where the series goes and then compare them all again.
I can say no.
And which ones do you like more?
I like Christian Bale a lot. One of the things that I think Christian Bale is really, really good is playing a sociopath. In a way, Batman's a little bit of that. Yes, he cares. Yes, but like a lot of his behaviors, though, he's like chaotic good. We've talked about
that shit crazy.
Oh yeah. And so like I feel like Christian Bale was pretty awesome.
Yeah, he was. I think that my favorite probably was Val Kilmer. Just kidding. Yeah, Christian Bale. After that movie, I was like, yes, my favorite Batman so far. I totally bought him, except the voice or whatever. I almost laughed the first time he did it. For me, the definitive Batman of all of them has still got to be Kevin Conroy, the voice of the animated series.
And that's why I qualified with live action.
Yeah, he's the best. All right, so we gave the Batman a solid B. So folks, thanks for listening, and let us know if you agree or disagree, if we just totally blew this and it's an A and we just haven't recognized its greatness, or if it's worse than a B, and let us know. We'd love to hear from you. And until next episode, stay safe, keep each other safe, and please keep on coming back to the one show where everybody's name is Rick
and everybody rules the world.